coming up.
I'm running over to the door and she said to me, Lee, Balen's not breathing.
The medical evidence is overwhelming.
Have you ever seen injuries like this in a child who's fallen out of bed?
I don't think the injuries were caused by a fall.
Little Balen died from terrible injuries.
It was just like someone hit him from the back of the head with a baseball bat.
So why then, 11 years on,
He died, but we don't know why.
is his father still waiting for answers?
We're going to keep fighting until the end.
That's next on 60 Minutes. The pain is unbearable. The frustration, immense. Luke Pendegast's father, Luke, can't fathom how 11 years on from his toddler son's mysterious death, no one has been held responsible for it. No arrests, no charges. And that's despite overwhelming medical evidence suggesting the 21-month-old had suffered horrific, non-accidental injuries. It's a tragedy that stunned the country New South Wales community of Tamworth, where the little boy lived. So why, after more than a decade, are there still no answers for Balen's dad?
Yeah, mine's bigger.
I think yours are bigger now, aren't they? You got big feet.
Mine are bigger than...
The Pendegast family are a close-knit and happy bunch.
Who's this?
Dad,
Who's that?
Baylen.
It is, isn't it?
On Father's Day.
And they love talking about their brother Balen, like he's just another member of their family.
When's his birthday?
Bye.
Love you, Dad.
Birthday.
Kiss. Oh.
But the truth of it is, Balen died 11 years ago as a toddler, well before 3 of his siblings were even born.
The big Baylen
Who's that?
and tiny Baylen.
Big Balen and tiny Balen.
Yet his memory is still everywhere in the Pendegast home.
You've got photos up on the wall, you've got his little hand imprints. It's not how a lot of people would go about grief and trying to move forward however they can. Why is it so important to you to do that?
It's a symbol to know that he'll never be forgotten, always loved, and forever remembered as the little boy that had his life taken and no justice. So that's why we keep his memory around.
Balen's father, Luke Pendegast, is angry that after more than a decade, his little boy's death is still a mystery. Failed by a hospital system that didn't recognise Balen had been seriously injured, and let down by a legal system that was supposed to bring answers, Luke is furious that still no one has been charged over his toddler's death.
We've got to keep fighting forward. Some days it is hard, but we need to know why he's not here.
And now, a leading medical expert is also raising serious questions about the night Balen died.
What must have happened to Balen?
There was a severe injury and some sort of force, object, would have been needed to cause that.
Born in Tamworth, the country music capital of Australia, in 2012, Luke Pendegast was Luke's first son. As the owner of a family trucking business, Luke often took his little boy to work with him.
He loved trucks, cars, anything with wheels on it, tools, loved going to work, helping me. He was Snowy, nicknamed Snowy.
Sadly, Balen's mother, Zoe Merlin, and Luke separated when their son was about 16 months old, and Luke moved out of the family home. Less than 5 months later, the little boy's mum formed a relationship with boxing trainer Anthony Rogers, and he moved in with her shortly after. While Balen stayed with his mum, he still spent quality time with Luke and his auntie Amy.
I used to do a lot of things with Balen, whether it was play at the park or we'd go shopping or go for a drive. Like, we had him for sleepovers a couple of times. He was a funny, outgoing little boy.
But that was until Balen suffered a series of disturbing injuries. When they look back on it now, Luke and Amy wish they had done more for the little boy. It all began one day in November 2013 when Auntie Amy rang Balen's mum to organise a visit with her nephew, but she was told he'd hurt himself.
I asked to have Balen for the day, and Zoe said that he had a little bruise and she didn't want people to get the wrong impression. So I asked to go over and see him.
Amy was horrified when she arrived at the house to see Balen with a swollen eye and a large bruise.
You must have immediately thought something just isn't right here.
Yep. He wasn't himself. Usually he's running around, pulling stuff out, like being a typical child. I asked her what had happened, like how he sustained the injury, and she said that he'd hit his head on his car, like race car bed that he had.
Frustratingly, when Luke heard about his son's injury, he was 1,000 kilometres away, driving his truck.
I didn't find out until Zoe sent the picture of a massive black eye from his nose to his ear. And I asked if she'd taken him to hospital. She said, no, I rang the medical hotline.
What'd you say to that? I've seen those photos. It looks terrible.
It was Godsmack.
And the only explanation out of that house, has it been that he fell out of bed?
He fell out of bed, hit his head on the bed. That's all I got.
In the days after the injury, Balen started vomiting. But his mother believed he only had gastro after she too had been suffering from a virus. 4 days after her last visit, Auntie Amy returned to take Balen shopping, but she was immediately concerned because his condition hadn't changed. During the outing, he started vomiting.
That's when I rang his mum, and that's when she asked me to bring him home. He clung to me. He just cried and didn't want to come.
Later that night, Balen's mum did take him to Tamworth Hospital. She told doctors her son had fallen out of bed almost a week earlier and that more recently he'd started vomiting. She also said she'd made the assumption that Balen had a virus he caught from her. But when doctors ordered a CT scan, they found the little boy had suffered a skull fracture.
Michael, tell me, what injuries do we know Balen had when he first went to hospital?
Well, the initial scan showed that there was a complex but not depressed skull fracture.
As one of Australia's most respected paediatric and adult neurosurgeons, Professor Michael Besser is in high demand when it comes to analysing child head injuries. Having pored over Balen's medical records, it's his opinion that while the hospital correctly picked up the skull fracture, doctors misinterpreted what it meant.
An incorrect diagnosis was made as to what was wrong with the child. It was felt that his vomiting was due to a gastrointestinal issue, and some of that was the mother saying that she had had a problem with her bowels and vomiting.
But you know vomiting can be a result of traumatic injury.
Yes, it's very common.
After just one night in hospital, Balen was sent home with no further treatment, despite doctors knowing about the skull fracture. As he left with his mum the next day, what no one had diagnosed was that inside the little boy's brain was a large hematoma. Incredibly, the CT scan detected it, but in what would be an alarming failure by the hospital, it was missed by doctors. It was a devastating mistake. In fact, the combination of a skull fracture injury and a hematoma made it more unlikely he simply fell out of bed.
Skull fractures in young children are not that common, but they occur after simple falls. What's different is it's very rare to get a brain injury from a simple fall or from a simple skull fracture.
had to be forced to his head and his skull.
Yes.
Professor Besser believes if doctors had managed to see Balen's brain injury, the hematoma, it should have been a wake-up call that something terrible happened to the little boy.
Have you ever seen injuries like this in a child who's fallen out of bed?
It would be very, very unusual. I don't think the injuries were caused by a fall.
There's a very clear argument, Luke, that the combination of a skull fracture and a hematoma means almost certainly Balen didn't fall out of bed.
The fractures were that big that it was just like someone hit him from the back of the head with a baseball bat. It was pretty severe.
Balen was in a bad way, but 5 days later, things got much worse.
She come running over to the door and she said to me, Lee, Balen's not breathing.
Apart from his kids, Luke Pendegast's pride and joy is this hotted up Holden Commodore. Fittingly, it's now also a tribute to his firstborn son, Balen. Tragically, the 21-month-old died in November 2013 after suffering horrific injuries. Today, Luke still can't fathom the reasons for his son's death. All he does know is that 11 days before Balen died, the little boy suddenly had a large facial bruise. Luke was told it was caused when the toddler fell out of bed. On the last day Luke spent time with his son, he was shocked to see Balen so sick.
He was just clingy. He'd have a burst energy and lay down, sleep, burst energy, lay down, sleep. All he wanted to do was be carried and cuddled.
You have suspicions at that point. Did any part of you go, just something is just not right here?
Well, at that time, I'm only getting told by his mother that he fell over in a bed.
Balen was so unwell that terrible day, Luke thought he should be with his mum. So he took him back to his former partner, Zoe Merlin, and her new boyfriend, Anthony Rogers.
You must remember that moment
I do.
so vividly.
I do. I met her at the doors, got him out of the car, got his bag out. I handed him to Zoe and he said, "I love you, Dad." And he walked inside.
The last thing he said to you was, "I love you, Dad."
Yeah. It's the last thing he ever said. That's all I remember of him. Walking through the door. "Love you, Dad," looking at me.
In the last 11 years, there's not one day that I haven't thought about that baby.
Leanne Hurden lived next door to Balen's mum and her boyfriend. Just a few hours after Luke had dropped Balen off, Leanne heard Zoe Merlin screaming. Balen was injured again. This time, he was unconscious.
She come running over to the door and she said to me, Lee, Balen's not breathing.
So, Leanne, you've run out of your house. What did you see once you got inside?
I asked where he was and he was in the front bedroom and I walked into the room and he was just being cradled by Anthony and there was just no movement from Balen at all. He was so unresponsive. So we put him down on the bed and I remember screaming that he's got no soul in his eyes. And then I checked his airways and I started to commit CPR on him.
What was Zoe and Anthony doing while you were trying to help Balen?
They were just screaming.
I got the call from the neighbours. Balen had just been rushed to the hospital. So I just hung up straight to the hospital. I ran in there. There would have been 20 or 30 people in the room trying to revive him. They were just going, he's having a cardiac arrest.
For 2 days, Balen remained on life support until the devastating call was made to turn it off.
We had a last hold, Guttle, and like time with him alone.
Did you say anything to him?
I just didn't believe it was happening. It's just, yeah, I told him I'd keep him proud.
Have you been given any explanation by the two people inside that house about what happened to Balen before he ended up in hospital?
She didn't really explain, just that he had a cardiac arrest.
When he died, he also had a blood clot on the other side, on the left side, over the hemisphere.
One of Australia's top neurosurgeons, Professor Michael Besser, has analysed the toddler's medical records and questions whether Balen's death was accidental.
It was a fresh subdural hematoma. There's blood clot in one of the major draining veins from the brain. There was a new extradural hematoma in the back of the head, a number of injuries to his eye, to the retina, to the globe, and to a number of his nerves going from the brain to his eyes. This is quite a severe trauma, and of course it resulted in a tragic outcome.
In your medical opinion, a person was involved in Balen's
It was a
injuries?
non-accidental injury, and certainly the extent of the injuries, the seriousness of the injuries, can be seen in a motor vehicle accident.
Luke, do you remember what was going through your mind when you first walked in here all those years ago?
Hoping for justice, answers, questions to be answered.
It would be 2018, nearly 5 years after Balen's mysterious death, when a coronial inquiry finally opened here at Tamworth Courthouse.
Still don't know why.
During the inquest, scathing evidence was given by 5 medical experts, including Professor Besser. They all agreed the toddler must have suffered brain injury caused by significant force on 2 separate occasions.
Going home with a headache.
For Luke, it was the first time he learned the true extent of the physical harm his little boy suffered.
Medical expert.
Was it tough hearing some of the things you heard?
Yeah, it was. There was damage to his brain, spinal cord, eyes, the broken skull. Just the alarm bell started ringing. What happened? You try and sit there and picture how. You're trying to look through memories, like where, how, why, how'd it happen.
In fact, the testimonies were so strong, the coroner suddenly suspended the inquest, convinced that not only there was enough evidence to charge someone, but that it could satisfy a jury to reach a guilty verdict. So he referred it to the New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions. The family was elated and thought they were getting closer to justice.
Yeah, that's it. Next time we'll be back, we'll be in a criminal court because someone's been charged for it.
But that didn't happen. It took prosecutors another 2 years to ultimately decide there was insufficient evidence to charge Anthony Rogers, the boyfriend of Balen's mum, over the toddler's death. Zoe Merlin also has never been charged.
It was like a punch in the gut that all the hard work was wasted and all the energy and effort has just been kicked to the gutter. Once we found out, I went and sat with him at the cemetery and I told him, we're going to finish this. We're going to make sure whoever did this to you, it's injustice at the end of it. Because it's not fair.
After the DPP refused to lay any charges, the coronial inquest into Balen's death reopened. At the end of it, Luke got some of his questions answered, when the coroner found, most likely, that Balen's injuries were not the result of accident or misadventure, and were the result of significant force by another person or persons. But the coroner couldn't explain how Balen received those injuries and who was responsible.
Something happened that night in the house to him that didn't happen by him. It happened by someone else.
Both Zoe Merlin and Anthony Rogers are adamant Balen's death was the result of an accident, and, in the eyes of the law, the pair has done nothing wrong. In a statement, Balen's mother told us the couple believe there was never an adequate investigation into what they say is the painful loss of her son.
I'm playing with my Barbies.
These days, Luke has married Tracy and they have 4 beautiful children.
It's not dinner time quite yet, 10 minutes.
But together, with their tightly knit extended family, the Pendegasts remain angry that they still have no definitive answers 11 years on about how Balen died.
What does justice for Balen look like? Now, more than a decade on, what do you want to see happen?
I want someone charged for it. Like, it's an innocent life. He didn't do anything wrong. He should be here, he should be at school today. Year 7, 8, playing sports with his brothers and sisters on weekends. We're going to keep fighting until the end, because that's what we told him we'd do. We'd fight till the end.
Last month, it would have been Balen's 13th birthday, and, like they do every year, his family went to the cemetery to pay him a visit.
All right, go.
We celebrated with an ice cream cake. We sang happy birthday to him, and then we all wrote on balloons and sent them up to heaven to him. Let him know that we're still here thinking of him.
What did you write?
That I'll miss him. I just missed him.
Hello, I'm Adam Hegarty. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.